Okay, let's go ahead and look at footnote 3 of my article. And it's at the end of that, the first full paragraph on page 224, and the last clauses, which encompass South Texas and northeastern Mexico. And what I claim in the sentence, if you look at the sentence, I claim that European newspapers are reporting that the French Emperor Napoleon III is meeting with the Confederate diplomat in secret to talk about a possible French Confederate alliance, which never happened, but this was the fear in the North. So note that I'm not giving a direct quote. Now, in footnote 2, I give a direct quote. In this footnote 3, though, I make a claim. I claim that European newspapers are reporting that the French emperor and Confederate diplomats are meeting in secret to create an alliance. So, because I make this claim, and because it's not common knowledge, and because I say it's from European newspapers, I have to cite it. I can't make a claim like that without citing it because, again, my reader is going to want to know, where did I get this information? Am I just making it up? Am I just making up a fantasy that the French emperor met with the Confederate envoy because it helps my argument? So I need to back up that claim that European newspapers are reporting about this secret meeting. It's very exciting, right? Because it's a secret meeting. I have to let my readers know that I'm not making this up, that this was being reported at the time. Okay, so let's go now to footnote 3. Now, here's one of the differences. In footnote 3, it's not a direct quote. I'm summarizing what European newspapers are reporting. Okay, in footnote 2, I quoted directly. In footnote 3, the sentence before footnote 3, I'm making a claim, but I'm not. Giving a direct quote. Okay, I'm just telling what is being reported. Where did I get that information? I got it from the North American and United States Gazette, which was a newspaper in Washington, D.C., from an article on July 14th, 1863. And so what happened is that the North American and United States Gazette reprinted an article from the Paris correspondent of the London Post about Slidell's interview with Napoleon. Okay, so once again, what we have is a reprinted article that the North American and United States Gazette has reprinted an article from the Paris correspondent of the London Post on a Confederate diplomat's interview with Napoleon III. Now, one of the things you might notice is that I don't give a date for that article that's being reprinted in the North American and U.S. Gazette, unlike in footnote 2, I give the date that the Richmond Dispatch was July 25th, 1863, and it was reprinted in the Chicago Tribune on August 1st, 1863. The reason I don't give a date for the reprinted article about the Paris correspondent of the London Post, because it wasn't in the North American and United States Gazette. They didn't put a date about when this article had appeared. So if it's not there, I just can't put it in. But what I'm still playing by the rules of the game, because my reader now can look at the North American and United States Gazette from July 14th, 1863, and they can double check and make sure that there was an article entitled Paris Correspondent of the London Post, Slidell's Interview with Napoleon, that had been reprinted in the North American and United States Gazette on July 14th, 1863. So you can only go with the data that you have. But I'm playing by the rules here because my reader, and you could do this too if you wanted to, if you look in the North, and actually I found this online at UTSA, so you literally could double check me. It's one of the newspapers in our databases, which is very convenient for me. This North American and United States Gazette reprinted this article from the London Post, which was very useful to me, and I summarized it. Okay, so It's really a great thing when primary sources are reprinting information from other primary sources, because it teaches me a lot and it allows me to tell my story. And this is what we're trying to do as historians. We're trying to tell a story. We're trying to create a narrative, right? But we're trying to create a narrative based on data points that we get from our evidence. We're just not making stuff up. That this is evidence that we have found. In this case, it was an article that was reprinted on July 14th, 1863. It was reprinted in the North American and U.S. Gazette. And so I'm just letting you know, I'm not just making this up. I found this claim that a Confederate diplomat and the French emperor were meeting in secret in London. I found this claim in a U.S. newspaper that was reprinting a story from a British newspaper. Okay? So that's footnote 3. Let's see now. Let's go to footnote 4. Okay, so footnote 4 is in the next paragraph. It's from the New York Times. And you'll see Louis Napoleon, the New York Times concluded, kind of in the middle, has put himself in such a position in regard to this continent, he cannot very well avoid taking this step. Period. End quote. Citation 4. Okay, let's look at. Let's go to note 4, and thankfully, yes, this is printed directly from the New York Times on August 1st, 1863. And if you want to check if I'm telling the truth, you can go into the New York Times on August 1st, 1863, and you can double check as to whether or not I quoted this correctly. And I'm also telling my reader, if they're interested in kind of this general topic, that they can, there's also an article which I don't really quote in the Chicago Tribune on August 24th, 1863. And again, with that, I'm just letting my reader know, okay, there's information out there that you might be interested in. I'm not really going to talk about it too much, the Chicago Tribune article, but you might want to check it out. Okay, so one of the things you might want to think about in citation, it's a dialogue that the writer of an article, of a book, of a journal essay, is having with his or her reader. Okay, it's a conversation with his or her reader, where you're both you're doing a couple of things. First, you're confirming that the evidence that you claim to exist does exist, and if your reader wants to double check it, well, here's where you go to double check it. I think more interestingly, you're having a conversation with your reader. You're saying, look, this is where information on this topic is, and go ahead and check it out if you want. It might be useful to you. You're not in conflict with your reader. You're trying to give your reader a hand. You're saying, okay, here's another. I'm not quoting the Chicago Tribune. This is citation 4 now. I'm not quoting the Chicago Tribune, but there was an interesting article on this topic in the Chicago Tribune, and you know what? Go ahead and take a look at it if you want. If you don't want, that's fine too.